We need to talk about TN visas. Not many people know this, but Canadians receive their TN visa at a port of entry before entering the US. So if you're doing it via land crossing, you would receive your TN visa at a US-Canadian border, and if you're doing it at the airport, you would receive your TN visa at customs. And what's funny is, I spoke with a person at customer service at the airport I'm departing from, and they didn't even know that TN visas were given at the airport. But anyways, to actually receive your TN visa, you need to go through a TN visa interview. And this happens at the port of entry of your choosing and is administered by a CPB or Custom and Border Protection agent. Basically, what they try to do is verify that you meet the criteria to be given a TN visa and enter the United States. So what are the criteria? Well, since TN visas are defined under NAFTA, you need to either be a Canadian, US, or Mexican citizen. Most of the research I've done has been for Canadian citizens, so all the advice that follows will be for Canadians. So first off, your profession needs to fall under one of the NAFTA professions. So in my case, I'll be going in as a computer systems analyst, but note that your actual job title and the NAFTA profession title might not always have a one-to-one correspondence, and there could be some differences. If there is, you just need to find the NAFTA profession that is as close to your actual profession as possible. Next, you'll need a proof of Canadian citizenship. All this requires is your passport, and if you're going through the airport or the border, then you already have this with you. Last, you need proof of credentials. And to prove this, you need a few things. So you need a letter from your employer that states how long you will be staying, what is your profession, and what is your pay. Then, since most NAFTA professions are tied to some sort of degree, you'll need proof that you actually graduated from an accredited university. So this will require your original degree and your original transcript. So those are all the things you should need to pass your TN visa interview. But there's some extra things you could bring, such as your resume or awards you've received or recommendations, which would probably make the process easier for you. In my case, the company that's sponsoring me has hired attorneys that have prepared a TN petition with all the information that I just specified. All I need to do is bring this petition along with the original documents of my degree, transcript, and passport, and then present this to the CPB agent so he can perform the interview. Then he'll probably ask a few questions and I'll successfully receive my TN visa. At this point, once you've been approved, you will receive your I-94 sheet, which basically specifies the terms and the length of your immigration, and you'll be able to access this online in a few hours from what I've read. So that's it. That's all you need to get through the TN visa interview. Now, I'm filming this a few days earlier, and on Monday when I enter Austin, you'll be able to see a bit more closely the process, and I'll be able to share my actual feelings and experience on it. So I didn't really do a good job of filming what happened on my trip to Austin. So let me take the time now to tell you exactly what happened. It all started in the morning when we woke up around 4 a.m. I got all my stuff ready. Everything was already packed from the night before, so all I really had to do was get any remaining things and head to the airport. So the airport was about 30-40 minutes away. It was a pretty quiet drive. There's not that much traffic at that time. And I get to the airport and I say goodbye to my parents and my girlfriend. It was kind of a sad moment, but I feel like we let out most of the feelings in the day leading up to the departure. So once we got to the airport, it was really a quick goodbye because I had to check in, go through security, do all the stuff, and I wanted to have enough time to be able to get through all those different checkpoints. So once I get into the airport, I go to the check-in line for my airline, which was United, and this woman approaches me. She checks in my bag, and it was like $30 to check in my bag, so that was pretty simple. Then I went through security, and security was just your classic, put all your stuff into trays, take off your shoes, take off any items that you're carrying on you. So I go through the security checkpoint. Obviously, my carry-on bag gets flagged because I was taking everything I owned with me, and I wasn't gonna take the time to take everything out of the carry-on and put it into the bin separately. So it got flagged. The security guard just checked through the stuff, everything went fine, and I got through. Now here's where the interesting part is. So after I got through security, it was time to go to customs. So at customs, I arrive at this counter and I tell the guy I would like to apply for a TN visa. This is the only rude guy I encountered in this whole journey. He basically told me, he's like, do you want me to give you a TN visa? In kind of a rude, sarcastic manner. And all I said was, from my understanding, there's an interview that has to be done. And he's like, yeah, I'll take you to the right people. So he walks me over to a separate room where I take a seat in front of these offices, and there's multiple offices, but only one is currently open. So as I'm sitting there, one of the Custom and Border Control agents approaches me and asks me for my documents. So I give her my documents and I continue sitting there while she brings them into a room with another agent, and they must have looked over those documents for what was at least 20, if not 30 minutes. And this just went on. I see them flipping through the pages since I'm sitting almost right in front of the doorway. At this point, I don't really know what to do. I couldn't film anything because there was signs on the wall saying don't film and don't take out any electronic devices. So after they finished looking over my documents, they called me in, and one of the agents asked me a few questions. So he asked me what I would be doing there, and I told him I would be working and the details of my work. And then he asked me something that I kind of wasn't expecting. He asked me to write what my typical day would look like on a blank sheet of printer paper. So I just took a couple of minutes to write out what I was gonna do on the job, which I hadn't seen done anywhere. Then some of the last questions he asked me just about my plans for the future and how long I was planning to stay there. So this was a question I was fully expecting because a TN visa is a temporary visa, so they really don't expect you to stay in the US longer than the length of the visa, which is usually 3 years. So after all those questions, I go back to sit down in my seat, and a few minutes later, both the agents come out and they take me over to a counter. At this point, they didn't tell me if I got it or not, so I'm still slightly nervous at this point. But then I see them going through like a cash register because the visa cost $50 American. By that point, I was so happy. They just went through the necessary steps. They wrote a couple of lines in my passport, and that was it. I got the TN visa. I thanked them for their time, and then I went on my way to the gate so that I could get on my flight. Some things I should mention though are my CPB agent was being trained by the other CPB agent. So I don't think it's common to have two agents working on your case, but from what I could tell, that one guy who was mainly asking the questions was actually being trained to do this for the future. And I had all the documents I listed in the beginning of the video, but what's interesting is I provided my original transcripts in a sealed envelope, and they actually took the time to open the sealed envelope even though I had an unsealed version. So I saw a lot of people saying you might not need the sealed version, you might need it. In the end, I brought it just in case, so I would recommend bringing a sealed version of your transcript just in case. So now I have my TN visa in my passport and I'm heading to the gate. This flight is actually a two-stage flight because there was no direct flight from Montreal to Austin. So the way it worked was I would fly from Montreal all the way to Washington, DC, and then from Washington, DC, I would fly all the way to Austin. The first flight to Washington, DC was only about an hour and a half, and it was on a smaller plane, and I had a single seat by the window, and on the other side of the aisle there was two seats, so it wasn't like a huge plane with 3 seats on each side, which I kind of liked because having a seat to yourself is pretty nice. And they even gave free snacks and drinks on this flight. So the first flight went pretty well, and after I arrived in Washington, DC, I had to go all the way to the gate on the other side of the airport. So in order to get to the other side of the airport, I had to take this underground train that took me all the way to the other side. I wasn't expecting the airport to be that large, but it ended up being quite the trek, and I didn't have a long layover. I only had about an hour layover, so I was kind of worried that maybe I might not make it, but in the end I had plenty enough time. So right before the second flight, the pilot came out and gave like a small speech. It was super nice. He was saying how he loves Austin as a city, which made me feel more comforted, honestly. Anyway, this flight was much larger. It was the 3 seats on each side. It was a Boeing 737. So I was a bit worried about this flight because they kept saying before boarding that it was packed and that there might not be enough spaces for carry-ons. My carry-on has all my camera equipment and some other fragile stuff, so I really did not want to have to check this bag. But I got in the boarding line quick enough and I ended up being able to put my carry-on in the overhead, no issue. So I take the flight, lasted about 3.5 hours. At this point, I've been awake since 4 a.m. I don't know, I just was feeling nauseous on the plane. I wasn't feeling that good. I was also in the middle seat, so I was really cramped up between 2 other people. For some reason, I couldn't fall asleep, so I just put in some podcasts and hope it would be over soon. Anyways, I get to Austin. It's warm, it's nice. There's like a live band playing in the airport, but I didn't get to really enjoy any of that because I had to go to bag check, which was outside the gate. I picked up my check bag. Now I had to get to my apartment. I arrived to the airport a bit before my check-in time for the apartment, so I just waited around in the airport and then I called an Uber to go to my apartment. The Uber was super nice. We had a friendly conversation and I got to my apartment pretty quickly. That's pretty much my whole journey to Austin. Honestly, it seemed a lot scarier in the moment. Now, recalling it back, it wasn't too bad. I'm just super pumped to be here. Just some things I'm worried about now that I'm here is after I arrived at my apartment, I was starving, so I went out to look for some food. I flew over here. I don't have a car, so I had to walk to go get food, and my apartment is conveniently located, but it was still a 15-20 minute walk to the nearest Chick-fil-A. I have a clip here of me walking to the Chick-fil-A and there's no sidewalks. I'm walking on a dirt path. It's just not ideal. It feels weird to walk around as a pedestrian because everything is so car-centric. The streetlights take so long to turn to the pedestrian right away that a 20-minute walk could end up being a 30-minute walk just waiting for lights to turn in your favor. So I really wasn't impressed by that, although I wasn't expecting big things from a car-centric city. Anyways, I ended my night by getting some Chick-fil-A and then just crashing in bed because I was just so tired from flying all day. Overall though, it's been a great experience and I'll definitely show you the apartment in the next vlog. So until then, see ya.